right, so introduce your ticket and tell us what makes you qualified for next year's executive board.
All right, well, we are GTL, or Got Towson Love. My name is Matt Sikorsky, running for president. For vice president, we have Nick Hoagland. For treasurer, we have Layla Fraser. For attorney general, we have Travis Bullock. And for Lise Sanchez, we have chief of staff. What makes us, I guess, qualified to run for the executive board. We have a lot of leadership in other parts of campus other than SGA. The only two people with SGA experience are myself and Nick. Nick's currently a senator. I've been a senator and a resident student life representative last year. I ran for vice president last year on the ticket to Unity and lost. And so now we're running again. We've like I said in the letter to the editor, we've been RAs, orientation leaders, treasurer of our student groups, presidents of our Greek organizations, student ambassadors, president of URG. We've been involved in all the other parts of campus that we need to be involved in to really get a good scope of exactly what's going on. And I keep saying we are the regular students who are taking that next step to just completely change the culture of SGA and rejuvenate it as an organization and make it re-student group focused.
All right, and you told me why you're qualified. Why are you really running?
We're really running just because, we want to create the changes. Like I said, we've all been involved in other student groups. We've, Layla this year has been operating without a budget, the equestrian club, due to kind of transition issues. So she's had to fundraise every single weekend. And she knows the struggles of trying to create a budget. She knows the struggles of wondering how much you have left in your general account. So she created the idea of maybe having general account being able to be online for any student group to access. We've all been involved in other student groups where we just don't have the funding or the availability of space to have meetings or the events that we want to be. So we really just want to make the changes that haven't been made in the past couple administrations. We really just want to change the things that we've all experienced as students that haven't been changed, and that's why we're running. This is for the passion, for getting things done, and that's why we want to run.
All right. So what can your ticket offer that others may not be able to? And why should your whole ticket be elected?
Repeat the question one more time,
Just what can your ticket offer that others might not be able to? What separates your ticket from other tickets, and why should your whole ticket be elected? Collectively, what do you guys bring to the table?
We should be elected collectively because of, just in about 4 to 5 weeks of being a ticket, we've come together so well together. We have started to be able to work off of each other in different ways. Like, if I might slip something up, Lisa says, like, oh, don't forget about this. I'm like, oh, that's great. I couldn't imagine forgetting about that. It's kind of important. Like the Towerlight interview, it's at 5:10, that kind of thing. Or just the sheer relationships that, like, we all just become, like, great friends throughout this process. We've all known each other in some capacity for the most part. I actually was the TU Cares leader with Layla when she transferred in. Me and Lisa were on the building council together freshman year. I've known Travis since freshman year, just through thinking about Greek life and things of that nature. When he was an RA last year. Nick met at Tiger Pride Day last year in Annapolis. So we've all kind of had this kind of like 6 degree of separation type thing with each other, and it's come together to mold so well together, which is being able to create new ideas. So like Travis might come up with an idea about a new platform, and every single one of us have just added something extra onto that. And what we bring to the table is just kind of the experience and the networks to actually make that happen. I presented legislation to Dr. Moriarty, Dr. Hall, Art King and Center for Student Diversity, Joe Osler and Auxiliary Services. Like, I have these personal relationships. We all have these personal relationships with these administrators to be able to actually get things done. And it's one of those things where maybe if we do get some administrative pushback on some of our initiatives, we have the relationships to where we can be like, okay, but you don't understand, this is something that's necessary, and actually get that thing done. That's what we bring. We bring that fire and just that way of actually working for the students. I was going to say working the system, but that wasn't really the right language. Just getting things done. And I think that collectively as a whole, we're all just from all areas of campus. We're all experienced student leaders in other parts of campus that have come together and just really just ready to make that change.
And could I add something real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Well, also we have 3 people on the ticket who are current presidents of an organization or have been. So we really understand the dynamics of how an organization should operate. So right when we enter into office, our entire ticket understands how to break down who does what, who holds who accountable, so things really get done and people are really doing their jobs.
And something that I've been saying is changing the culture of SGA, changing how it works, changing how we approach different things. You know, Nick and Travis themselves, they became presidents of their fraternities and doubled the amount of men in their fraternity. Nick just recently won his chapter of the year for his entire fraternity in the nation. Like, we have the skills, we have the experience of changing organizations, changing the foundation of them. And we're just ready to do that with SGA.
All right. Looking at this year, what would you say are some of the weaknesses within the SGA?
You know, from what we've gathered from talking to student groups is just the communication. So, you know, I talked to one of the co-directors from PDOT, Progressive Democrats, and for most of their conferences or events or anything that they do, the co-director's been having to pay out of pocket. No student group should ever have to pay for an event or anything out of pocket. That's what the student government is there for. That's why we have a $1.4 million budget to help pay for these student group events, you know? And we talked to her, she's like, well, originally, you know, we couldn't get in contact with their senator. We've contacted like 5 times, and then we missed the deadline for the budget, and then, you know, we tried reorganizing, and then we just couldn't get there. Then we were figuring out what we could do from there, and we were just, you know, I guess just a break in communication somewhere along the line, where, you know, the group just couldn't get the budget that they needed, and they've had to pay out of pocket. A lot of other people just feel that sometimes the SGA is unreachable. Like, they feel like they can't go there, you know? And creating just a really welcoming, opening environment for any student group, you know? I feel like people don't even know that they can go to SGA meetings on Tuesdays at 5 in Loch Raven. Little plug there. And, you know, and going in there and just being like, look, I don't know, I tripped on like 4 bricks yesterday by the beach. Like, let's just say that someone said that. And then, like, okay, a senator or the executive board can then talk to facilities management right away and get, you know, those bricks recaulked or whatever they do and get it fixed so no one else has to trip, and that's a safety hazard. I don't think students understand that. And I think that just really getting out there, getting unique type of communications out there. So going to the beach, you know, there's SGA days. You know, maybe having bi-weekly SGA days, or maybe it's not the whole Ritas and golf cart type thing, but, you know, everyone's out there in their SGA shirts just walking around, you know, throughout the beach, throughout the Center for the Arts, you know, up at Towson Center, places where students might not get reached, and they're going there.
So you're saying students may not feel as connected this year. Is that what'll change in the future then for next year?
Not even this year, just in general to the SGA. And nothing against, I'm not saying that's against like this administration. I'm just saying as a whole for SGA. That's something that I've come across in my 3 years here. And that's something that we want to change.
Can I add?
Yeah.
And that's really been we've really seen that when we visit these student groups. Who'll say, like, we haven't seen our senator in months, and we've had difficulties because we're not having that communication between SGA and our group. And, you know, that really, that's, I don't know if that's a symptom of the system, but that's something that we're really passionate about fixing.
And we already have ideas for fixing those types of things. So, you know, the Conowingo Lounge is shut down. And there's because of a lot of miscommunication of what's going on with that. So an idea that Nick came up with, he actually just thought of this yesterday, was what if there is an hour, like senators have 5 hours a week. What if one of their hours was to sit in the Conowingo Lounge? So there's always someone in SGA there kind of monitoring, making sure things aren't getting destroyed. But, like, then there's a senator directly there. If a student group's like, oh, yeah, by the way, what is this policy about? You know, the senator can ask, or they can get someone from the executive board or in the cabinet to come answer them because they're already in the Conowingo Lounge right there directly. So, you know, we're thinking of ways to just kind of fixing these problems. And that kind of also helps fix a connection problem right there of always having a senator, you know, in the Conowingo Lounge or around that somebody can go and talk to, you know.
Okay. Have you personally, or any of you guys, ever received any violations or strikes on your record, or things that are going to be carried with you?
You mean like judicial wise?
In the for the election commission.
You know, there's charges that are always brought up just to see what happens, but we currently have no strikes as a ticket on. I think, yeah.
Now, what power do you believe that the SGA should have as a whole, and how big of an influence do you believe SGA should be apart from funding student organizations?
So can you repeat the first part of the question?
Yeah.
Sorry.
What power does the SGA have, in your opinion?
I think they have the power to make a lot of change. We're a growing school, and I think the administration really is, receptive to what we have to say. We're getting a new president. We just got a new athletic director. We just got a new director of Greek life. We're getting all these new fresh administrators, and I think right now the next administration, power that they have is incredible to really set the standard with the new president coming in being like, this is what it's like to be a Towson Tiger. This is the student experience. These are our concerns. This is what we like, and this is what we would like added. So I think next year's administration has an incredible amount of power of just really shaping how the administration receives student concerns and then reacts to them. Because that's the thing is, it's the SGA's power to not just take in, student concerns, like this is what we've gathered, and have, the decision makers be like, oh, okay, that's cool, but we're still going to go this way. It's the SGA has the power to be like, we actually feel that this needs to be done. And, like an example, this isn't SGA, this is the University of Residence Government, but my freshman year, I remember Parking Transportation Services was looking to making the resident parking permits double to $500 because they said that resident parking permits were there for longer. And so URG and the SGA both kind of geared up together and said, that is absolutely outrageous, that shouldn't be happening. And they actually didn't double it. So it's situations like that the SGA really has the power to help make the decisions. And what was the second part?
How big of an influence is the SGA apart from funding student organizations?
Like I just said, making those big decisions. Next year, homecoming is going to be a little bit different with Greek life. We're not really sure what's going to go on, but it's a lot earlier. And Greek life is a big part of homecoming week with Yell Like Hell, with all the sandwich boards and things of that nature. And it kind of runs into recruitment and a lot of other things. So, there's kind of some confusion what's going to be happening. So something that we've kind of come up with, a thought of, is a homecoming parade. Of why not, we used to have homecoming parades down York Road and things of that nature. So, 2 years ago, we had Michael Phelps just in a Hummer waving. Thousands of people came out. What if we had a homecoming parade where different student groups, or maybe, the soccer teams, the volleyball teams, could make floats, down York Road. Different businesses, whether it's THB or Burger Bros or Subway or what have you, could have floats coming down. Kids would come out. What kid doesn't love a parade, Like that's a way to connect things. And I think that, the SGA has the power to make those types of traditions. Like, that's something that could just last for as long as it could. And that's something that, it's something creative that we thought of that could be that wow factor, in kind of enhancing the community outreach instead of just being like, we'd like to do the big event. We'd like to do town and gown. Like, we'd like to have a collaborative parade for our homecoming that you guys can come to, and then come to our homecoming game and see fireworks afterwards. Something that's like that wow factor that the SGA could really, use the resources to do.
And Matt, could I also add on one thing real quick? Well, in terms of the SGA as a whole, and what their job is to the general student population, well, the administration, as Matt was talking about, has been pretty receptive to making Towson better and addressing student concerns. But I think just as an average student going through Towson, a lot of times you forget you're attending this university, but you're also a customer to this university. So it's a lot the senators and the SGA's job to remind, hey, if we don't like things, we don't need to keep putting up with it. We can get together as an entire group of students, as like a whole student body, and say, this is one of our big concerns. We need this changed and addressed.
Okay. You kind of mentioned it at the beginning, how you guys met, and became close and whatnot. But how did you choose individually who would be running for each position on the ticket? And was it based on any demographic, filling certain things, or was it just, I want to do this, let's fill it like that?
Well, in the very beginning, when forming a ticket, I was kind of confining myself to, I guess, people within SGA, and then I kind of took a step back after I decided to run. It's like, what would be the best ticket to really, kind of run? And I remember just seeing Travis one day on campus, and he's a double major in political science and economics. I'd known him for what he had done, within his fraternity and as an RA and things of that nature. And so Travis was actually the first guy that I pulled for Attorney General, because he's written 2 constitutions for student groups, for 2 sports clubs, and kind of helped through that entire process. And I was like, you would be a great person who would just be like really, receptive and available to students who could just kind of come and like, this is what we want to do. How can we do this? He's extremely smart in just policies and things like that, and he really wants to simplify for student groups to be able to, be the next big student group on campus. So, Travis was really the first guy that I saw for Attorney General. And then from there, I saw Lise on campus one day. And I felt the chief of staff needed to be someone creative because they plan the summer retreat that the student government goes on. And someone who could help run the cabinet, who's extremely organized, and like I said, mainly creative and can really get the cabinet energized. And I remember just seeing Lisa. I had worked with her freshman year, and I knew that, she would be a great choice for that. And I talked to her, and she said yes immediately, thankfully. And then from there, we're like, okay. I felt the vice president needed to have SGA experience. So I remember sitting in SGA meeting one day, me and Travis, and then I saw Nick Hoagland, and I was just like, Nick, because I met him, when Tiger Pride Day, he done his fraternity, he was on the Interfraternity Council Executive Board, and we were just sitting there, and he literally texted me, Nick Hoagland, and I'm like, I'm already ahead of you. So we actually both called him and sent him a Facebook message, and that was one of his really busy weeks with exams, so he didn't get back to us for like 3 days, and I was like, well, I guess we're going to have to start from scratch on the VP here. And then after an exam, I went into Hawkins College at Brick Street Cafe, saw him there, and I was like, I want you to run for vice president. And, we talked, because I just known what he had done as president of his fraternity, having that SGA experience as a senator and things of that nature. And so, he took the weekend to think about it. He got us back to us, and he said, yes, absolutely. And then treasurer is always a hard position to fill because who wants to be treasurer of a student group, pretty much? So I'd known Layla as a double major in math and economics, and that she was the treasurer of the equestrian club, and that she had gone through all of these different, struggles of not having a budget, of having to fundraise every single weekend. And then I remember Facebooking her, and I was like, so, what would you think about maybe running for SGA treasurer? She was like, OMG, I've always wanted to be on student government and be involved in that sense, She's just extremely brilliant when it comes to all that. She likes doing math. She de-stresses by doing math puzzles. I don't know anyone else who does that.
I'm a huge nerd.
So, that's kind of how we filled it. It kind of all fell into place, and I'm so happy it did fall in the way that it did. So I added the extra little fun stories.
Okay. What policies do you plan on implementing as a ticket or whoever is elected, and do you believe that they are feasible?
Yeah. So I'll just name a couple of various ones. As a building council president my freshman year when I was president of URG, you can be reimbursed for things that you buy. So, it takes a decent amount of time, like 2 weeks to get the check cut and get it cashed and all that sort of stuff. So one big thing that came up recently with Hillel doing a collaborative event was just getting stuff reimbursed. URG can be reimbursed. RAs can be reimbursed. Why isn't there an SGA policy about reimbursement? Obviously, there will have to be kind of limitations, and there's university policies that have to be followed, like university funds cannot be bought to buy alcohol and other different things like that we just have to abide by. But why not have something that's set up to where if you have an event and you need to go out and buy those extra plates and cups, or you need to go out and buy those extra markers and paper for your event, for the banner showing people where it's at, if you have your valid receipt and it follows just the basic stuff that can be refunded, you should be able to be refunded, So that's one big thing that we're working on. I know that's something that was huge, talking to student groups that they really liked. Another thing that we kind of came up is the Thrive Fund. So, there's student groups can be budgeted. They can have their supplementals, supplementals, and then they also go to the Prove It Fund. But Prove It Fund is basically for events, and there's a lot of limitations to it. So something we creative is we want to get something where student groups can get that extra thing that will really make them pop, that make them wow. Like, what is something that can make them thrive and not just survive throughout being a student group at their events? And so the Thrive Fund would be something that could really, be used to buy that thing that makes your student group just amazing. So an example is Allure Dance Troupe does about 10 to 12 performances every single semester. And they have been trying for semester after semester, trying to get funding for uniforms for all of them to wear, and they haven't been able to. So they've been having to go, like Target and Walmart and buy their own uniforms and kind of make them. And I think for a student group that's that size, it's about 35 to 40 girls who performs that much, they should be able to come to the SGA and get those uniforms. If they're really helping out Towson Love by performing off campus and on campus at various events, like the Thrive Fund is something that we could use to really help them out. We want to be student group focused. That's where we're all coming from, student groups who've experienced these trials and all that sort of stuff that we want to fix. So we got the refund policy, we got the Thrive Fund.
You want to do the general campus-wide ones?
Yeah, we have some other things. We want to get one of the floors in the library open 24 hours, and we think that's actually completely feasible. it's just something where it needs to be well researched and well done. You know, a lot of schools exactly like us have 24-hour libraries, so it's something that we would have to, you know, see what they're doing, how they're doing it. You know, the library, besides the hallway lights, are actually turned. Like, all the lights are turned on 24 hours all night. Like they're not shut off. So electricity usage, besides some extra computer usage, won't really go up. The only extra thing you'd have to do is get 2 people to staff it for the extra 5 hours during the day. So like these ideas may seem far-fetched, but they're completely feasible with the right executive board and the right mindset and research to be able to get them done.
And actually, I thought about this in terms of the staffing, like the abacus security agents that we have in residence halls. If we trust them in residence halls, why can't we trust them in the library as well? And that's an extra job in the community, and that's like those types of things, those types of ideas are completely feasible. We just have to do the research.
And they can branch off other ideas from there. Is that good enough for the policy?
So, what do you think is the largest student concern? Is it parking, textbooks?
We actually did a question on our Facebook page, Got Towson Love. Check it out. Like it. And we did a question, and I put some other things in there, and students added their own. I mean, some were just like specific people or silly things, but the number one thing was parking availability. And in reality, there's not much the SGA can just physically do in like that about parking. You know, we're getting a new 1,500 spot parking garage, which will definitely alleviate a lot of stuff. One cool thing we thought about is for shuttle systems. So, you know, you can work with Apple and make your own apps, almost about anything. So one thing we thought of is you'd have to have your a smartphone to be able to do this, but having an app to where you could see where the shuttle system literally is on the map. So say you live off campus, and you're like, okay, so I'm about to go to, like, say you live at the Commonwealth at Charles, and you're like, okay, where's the bus stop at? You can literally just pull the app up, and when the bus stops at a stop, say they just send a signal or something like that, and you can actually see where it's at on the map. Ouch, Dan, I'm kidding. You can see where it's at on the map. So you're like, okay, I got 2 more stops, or, they just passed me, that sort of thing. So that's like kind of like the whole parking shuttle situation. You know, if students have, like, these different resources where they can better utilize the shuttles, then maybe parking would alleviate a little bit better. Besides from that, you know, there's always the construction's always the next big one. We can't just change construction, but one thing we would like to do is working with the construction, agency and facilities management and making detours make sense. Like, you know, if you're coming out of the first floor of the Union and you're trying to get to the CLA building, you have to go, like, practically, like, to the end of Burdick just to get around and then go back to the CLA building. And it might only seem like, oh, it adds 4 to 5 minutes on your commute, but that's a big deal because, you know, parking is kind of tight as it is. So if you have to park in the Union garage or something of that nature and you're trying to get to the CLA building, you you just get a spot, you try to get over there, and normally might only take 2 to 3 minutes, but with this extra detour route, it takes like an extra 5 to 6 minutes. So just working with them to, like, what is the safest detour route that we can get, but doesn't seem so completely far-fetched and out of the way that it just adds this complete detour. So to some of the bigger concerns, you know, we do have some ideas that can be feasible. There are just some things that no matter what executive board or what organization it is, it just can't be fixed. You know what I mean? But we do have a lot of other ideas, like on our website, that we've talked to students that, you know, we could do. Like I said, you know, the library would be a huge thing. Another one is the dining hours. You know, every single year it seems like, how can we, you know, add later dining hour or early dining hours on the weekend? So one of the main concerns we got is if you wake up at 10 o'clock on a weekend, you know, and you live on campus, or you live right off campus in Towson Place apartment, something like that, there's nowhere to eat until 12. So getting like an hour and a half earlier dining hours on the weekends, you know, working with auxiliary services and Chartwells to make that happen, at least one dining hall on campus anywhere, you know, would be extremely helpful. That's a big concern that everyone's had. Late night dining option. Say we can get this 24-hour library, why not make the dinner halls open till 1 a.m. or 2 a.m.? And a lot of the, I guess, feedback we got from the administration before, is I've actually presented this before, is that they don't have the workers who have the proper transportation of getting home, because public transportation ends at 12 a.m. And there's tons of student workers or, you know, workers who are right next to the campus who would be more than willing to, you know, work that hour or 2 extra later shift, you know. And it's a huge resource that students would use. So that's kind of like dining hall hours, parking, construction, I'd say, were the biggest ones. And we do have ideas for each of them.
It sounds like you guys are pretty up to date with what the students want. Based on how you guys feel about the transparency within the SJ organization and to the student body.
Yeah, and the whole thing is, you know, if elected, you know, we're already at a great start. Like, every student group we talked to, you know, we told our ideas, but then we're like, what's something that you want? And we've gotten something different from each student group. added it to our platforms and working with them. Transparency in SGA right now, not even just this current administration, just the SGA in general. Like I said, it's almost seen as like its own private entity. I was in the SGA for 2 years, and I ran for vice president last year. And when I went to the first or 1 or 2 SGA meetings and sat in the audience, it almost felt awkward for me, and I knew everyone, and it wasn't anything they did. It's just like, it's just a really weird just environment to just be in. And I think, showing, going to the student groups, going to their meetings, that's a big thing, is mandating senators to go to student groups meetings maybe once every other week, or go to the kind of Wingo Lounge, or making bi-weekly SGA days, or just showing us as an executive board, like, we can go to these, like, obviously we'd be pretty busy, like, for certain, like, office hours and things like that, but, like, going to these student group meetings, showing our faces is the biggest thing, like I said, I feel like we are the most student group connected ticket.
And just to add something to that, if students feel like they can approach us, they'll be more likely to bring up issues with us, and then they can actually work with us and we can actually solve those problems, because they'll feel comfortable talking to us.
And then also in terms of transparency, I wanted to add too, with the 5 office hours that senators have to fulfill, another one of our ideas and initiatives that we definitely want to see through if elected is ensuring that one of those office hours is spent with the student organizations you represent. So these senators are assigned anywhere from like 5 to 8 student organizations. So ensuring that once a week they at least have a meeting with either the executive board of the organization or show up to the general meeting for, as long as they can throughout the week. Just so, if you ever have a question for your senator or ever are wondering what's going on, you can just ask them, because they're literally sitting in the room with you. And then also in terms of transparency from the presidential side, Matt wrote all those report skis. It's the Sikorsky report skis.
You might have heard it.
And of course, he's taking a break now because of campaigning and granted, it might be an unfair advantage if there's a lot of Sikorsky report skis, and also he's very busy right now. But, if elected presidential Sikorsky or presidential report skis, maybe.
Yeah, that's something I've actually thought about. Is like, there used to be the SGA monthly report that they used to have a full page ad in the Towerlight, and something of that nature is on a personal level, I wrote the Sikorsky reports about things that I'd heard from other students, and I'd gotten a lot of feedback on campus and on Facebook and things about the things that we would write about, and it's almost be like that thing, of that type of nature of just writing like a presidential report, maybe bi-weekly. And that's something that, I guess with the transparency, is actually one of my personal initiatives. As URG president, I think I did an okay job at like keeping up with the life cycle of a resolution. So say Dan's a senator, and he writes something to get dining hours open later, okay? One thing that I would be doing every single week with all the resolutions that we've gotten is giving like an update on the life cycle. Say, okay, the next week or two, I'll be like, okay, so, we got it to Chartwell's, and we've talked to our auxiliary services, and we set up a meeting. And then the next week, okay, we just met with them, this is some of the feedback, we're going to go back to the dining council next week and see what's going on. And just showing what's actually happening to these concerns, that we're like, okay, we wrote a resolution about it, what's going on with it, and keeping up the life cycle of it so everyone knows exactly what's going on. And that could be something where, obviously we can maybe buy an ad in the Towerlight or something like that, or even if we got permission to write it, it's kind of maybe put that in there, or put it on our website, and things of that nature. And I think another important part of the transparency thing is, like I said, is just changing the culture to, there's a very good family feel within SGA. That's something that I loved about SGA, and that's why I keep coming back, is, being a part of it is just a really cool feeling with the people that you know and knowing the change that you can make. But we should have, everyone feel that they can immediately just come in and be a family part of that. So I think, senators do a lot of work. 5 office hours mandatory, pre-meeting, SGA meeting, outside of office hours, going to student group events and things like that. And showing that, we as an executive board appreciate them, appreciate the cabinet, will help trickle down to how much they appreciate their student groups. And, it can just trickle down from there and even more. A lot of our ideas are kind of planting the seeds to just kind of grow short and long term down the road, and hopefully for next SGA executive boards and so on and so forth.
All right, well, those are all of our questions. Is there any kind of final 30-second plug you want to say to the students?
Let me think real quick. Like we've been saying throughout this entire thing, we've experienced the frustrations of being in student groups or being a student here, whether it's through advising or, looking at the clock and seeing it's 11:15 and there's nowhere to eat besides China Walk or Seasons Pizza, or wishing that there was maybe a better rate my professor to look at for your professors at Towson, just treview.com. We have an idea with that. If elected, we promise you that our platform list will immediately become a checklist and start working on them right away, and we will continue doing what we're doing, going to students on the beach, going to student group meetings and their events, and being like, what could have made this event go smoother? What's going on in your student group meeting right now that's frustrating that you wish could change? And like I said, changing the culture of SGA can help change the culture of the university. So another big thing is school spirit. You know, getting one of our big initiatives is Towson Fine Campus, something I've been working on since a freshman. Getting banners around campus. You know, if we take pride in our school on campus, then I think students would take pride in being a part of this university, which would, you know, just trickle down to all facets of the university from there. I know that's more than 30 seconds. But real
So much love
students,
and so much to
real
say.
concerns, real change. That's what we're about.